January. Friday. Well, I learned my lesson about getting a ride from Mom, so I'm back to walking to school. But when I was heading home with Rowley this afternoon, I seriously didn't think I had the energy to make it up the hill to my house, so I asked Rowley if he'd give me a piggyback ride. Rowley didn't exactly jump at the idea, so I had to remind him that we're best friends, and this is the kind of thing best friends do for each other. He finally caved when I offered to carry his backpack for him. I have a feeling this was a one-time thing, though, because Rowley was completely wiped out by the time he dropped me off at my house. You know, if the school is going to take away our bus ride home, the least they can do is install a ski lift on our hill. I've emailed the principal about 5 times with my suggestion, but I haven't heard anything back yet. When I got to my house, I was pretty tired, too. My new thing is that I take a nap every day after school. In fact, I live for my naps. Sleeping after school is the only way I can really recharge my batteries. And on most days, the second I get home, I'm in bed. I'm actually kind of becoming an expert at sleeping. Once I'm out, I can sleep through just about anything. The only person I know who's better at sleeping than me is Roderick. And here's the reason I say that. A couple of weeks ago, Mom had to order Roderick a new bed because he's worn his out. So the furniture guys came to take his old mattress and box spring away. When they came, Roderick was in the middle of his after-school nap. So they took his bed away, and he just slept on the floor, right in the middle of his empty bed frame. The thing I'm worried about is that Dad is going to ban our after-school naps. I'm starting to get the feeling he's sick of waking the two of us up for dinner every night. January. Tuesday. Well, I hate to admit this, but I think my naps are starting to have an effect on my grades. See, I used to do my homework when I got home from school, and then I watched TV at night. Lately, I've been trying to do my homework while I watch TV, and sometimes that doesn't work out too good. I had this 4-page biology paper due today, but last night I kind of got caught up in this show I was watching. So I had to try to write the whole thing in the computer lab during recess today. I didn't have a lot of time to do any research, so I played with big margins and large font sizes to stretch what I had to 4 pages. But I'm pretty sure Miss Nolan is gonna call me on it. Page 1. Chimps. A 4-page paper by Greg Heffley. Page 2. This is a chimpanzee, or chimp for short. Chimps are the subject of the paper you're holding in your hand right now. Page 3. Chimps are supposed to be smart, but I'm not so sure that's true. Page 4. Well, it looks like I'm out of paper, so I guess this is the end. Yesterday, I actually got a 0 on a quiz in geography. But in my defense, it was really hard to study for the quiz and watch football at the same time. To be honest with you, I don't think teachers should be making us memorize all this stuff to begin with. Because in the future, everyone is going to have a personal robot that tells you whatever you need to know. You could ask it, "Robot, what's the largest estuary in the world?" And he would say, "The Ob River in Russia." Thank you very much. Speaking of teachers, today Mrs. Craig was in a really bad mood. That's because the big dictionary that usually sits on her desk was missing. I'm sure someone just borrowed it and forgot to put it back, but the word Mrs. Craig kept using was stole. Mrs. Craig said that if the dictionary wasn't returned to her desk before the end of the period, she was keeping everyone inside for recess, Then she told us she was going to leave the room, and that if the culprit returned the dictionary to her desk, there wouldn't be any consequences, and there would be no questions asked. Mrs. Craig made Patty Farrell class monitor and left the room. Patty takes her job as class monitor really seriously, and when she's in charge, nobody dares to step out of line. I was just hoping the person who took the dictionary would hurry up and come clean, because I had 2 cartons of chocolate milk for lunch. But nobody did come forward, and sure enough, Mrs. Craig stuck to her promise and kept us inside for recess. Then she said she was going to keep us inside every day until the dictionary was returned. January. Friday. Mrs. Craig has kept us inside for the past 3 days, and still no dictionary. Today, Patty Farrell was sick, so Mrs. Craig put Alex Aruda in charge of the room while she was gone. Alex is a good student, but people aren't afraid of Alex the way they are of Patty Farrell. As soon as Mrs. Craig left the room, it was complete pandemonium. A couple of guys who were sick of getting stuck inside for recess every day decided to try and figure out who took Mrs. Craig's dictionary. The first person they interrogated was this kid named Corey Lamb. I think Corey was number 1 on the list of suspects because he's smart and he's always using big words. Corey fessed up to the crime in no time flat, but it turns out he only said he did it because the pressure made him crack. The next kid on the list was Peter Lynn, and before you knew it, Peter was confessing too. I figured it was just a matter of time before those guys cornered me, so I knew I had to think up something fast. I've read enough Sherlock Sammy books to know that sometimes it takes a nerd to get you out of a pinch, and I figured if anyone could crack this case, it was Alex Aruda. So me and a couple of other guys who were worried about getting hassled went over to Alex to see if he could help us out. We told Alex we needed him to solve the mystery of who took Mrs. Craig's dictionary. But he didn't even know what we were talking about. I guess Alex had been so wrapped up in his book that he hadn't even noticed what had been going on around him for the past couple of days. Plus, Alex always stays inside to read during recess, so Mrs. Craig's punishment hadn't had a big effect on his life. Unfortunately, Alex has read his share of Sherlock Sammy books too, so he said he would help us if we paid him $5. Well, that was totally unfair, because Sherlock Sammy only charges a nickel. But me and the other guys agreed it was worth it, and we pulled our money, then forked over the $5. We laid out all the facts of the case to Alex, but we didn't know a whole lot. Then we asked Alex if he could get us pointed in the right direction. I expected Alex to start taking notes and spout some scientific mumbo-jumbo, but all he did was close the book he was reading and show the cover to us. And you're not gonna believe this, but it was Mrs. Craig's dictionary. Alex said he'd been studying the dictionary to get ready for the state spelling bee next month. Well, that would have been nice to know before we gave him our $5. Anyway, there was no time to waste complaining, because Mrs. Craig was going to be back in the room at any second. Corey Lamb grabbed the book from Alex and put it on Mrs. Craig's desk, but she walked in the room right at that moment. Mrs. Craig ended up going back on her whole no consequences promise. So Corey Lamb is going to be spending the next 3 weeks inside during recess. Looking on the bright side, though, at least he'll have Alex Aruda to keep him company.